So today, you don't have Sam. We don't have Sam anymore. He flew out this morning. So this morning, you stuck with me, a mini version of Sam. But I'll try my best to keep up with the energy level that Sam has given us throughout the previous 2 days. So what I'd like you to do is maybe we can do a little recap of what Sam has asked us to do throughout. So, it would be great if we could show our support to our panel and the session by every time that the panelists finish their presentation, we could give a big round of applause on our feet, right? So let's practice this. Thank you very much. Let's do this. So I would like to welcome the moderator of this session, who is a very dear colleague of mine. He's our VSO colleague who look after the corporate engagement in Asia Pacific. And I would like to welcome SACHAL ANEJA.
Thank you. The world today has much bigger problems and needs deeper, more evolved solutions. Poverty, inequality are at extreme limits. Climate is changing faster than we thought, and there is vast destruction of natural resources. We are greatly affected by religious conflicts, government instability, and corruption. Lack of quality education and economic opportunity, and we hear more often than ever about new viruses and life-threatening diseases. The 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development acknowledges that volunteers are key stakeholders in the process of achieving the SDGs. Integration of thoughts, ideas, actions, and technologies is more important than ever. Good news is that some world-class collaborations are happening that bring unique solutions to complex issues, effectiveness to project design and delivery, and create phenomenal impact. Welcome everyone to this session. My name is SACHAL ANEJA, and I work with VSO, which is one of the world's leading international development organizations that works to build inclusive, resilient, and accountable communities by working through volunteers. Our USP is our volunteering for development approach and the relational volunteering model. In the next 90 minutes, we shall unbox different drivers and challenges to multi-sector, cross-cultural collaboration, and also hear from some of the best minds we have in the sector today. We have the detailed profiles of all our panelists in the information pack, so I won't go very much in detail. And I would request each of them to speak for about 18 minutes on the theme of Stronger Together. This will be followed by a round of questions and answers, and I would like to come to you first, and then go back to my questions. So just to begin, I'd like to start by inviting our panelists to the stage. Our first panelist, and it'll be great if you could give each of them a round of applause, HEEKYUNG Min, Executive Vice President of Global CSR Management at Cheiljedang Corporation. Welcome. Our next panelist, Mr. VICHIEN PHONGSATHORN, Chairman of Premier Group of Companies. Welcome. Either, you can sit down. And very excited to also have Michelle KITNEY, Chief Executive Volunteering New Zealand. Welcome, Michelle. And I'd like HEEKYUNG, if you could start with your presentation first. Yeah.
Good morning. My name is HEEKYUNG, and I'm very pleased to be here at IAVE AP 2019 conference. Today, I would like to share with you how corporations can promote the culture of volunteering as a way to give back to society through some of our examples. I'm going to start briefly with introducing my company. CJ started as Korea's first sugar manufacturing company and now grown into the largest food corporation in Korea. And our Korean food brand, Bibigo, is now in 56 countries worldwide. But also, we've grown into, the CJ Group has grown into the area of entertainment and media business. So the right picture is our group picture. Just to give you like a 1-minute introduction of what we do as a CJ Group, obviously Cheiljedang is a food company, but we are also in bio, retail, and entertainment and media. We have something we do called KCON, which is to show Korean culture to overseas. So we are actually combining Korean culture, even including the food, into our entertainment and media business. So there's a music, and then the KCON has been, it's 8 years in LA and New York, and since last year we are also doing KCON in Bangkok as well. So what we do is based upon our philosophy. CJ's mission is contributing to the global community by providing the best value of products and services. And our company vision is to become a global lifestyle company, emphasizing health, happiness, and convenience. Our core value, and then also the most important, relevant to today's discussion, is a shared growth, which we hope will be an important element in building a healthy ecosystem in society. There is actually a basis for this, our philosophy. Our mission and vision are based upon our founding philosophy, contributing to the national economy through business. Then there is a spirit of sharing, which we call it, it's a principle of CJ's philanthropy. There are authenticity, continuity, business relevance, and employee engagement. All these things are the very important criteria for what we do for our volunteer program. At CJ Cheiljedang, when we try to mobilize our corporate competencies, such as product and service awareness, to support our core shared value of health and well-being, we believe it is our responsibility to address the utmost unmet needs of the society. And we were the first company in Korea to have a dedicated CSR team as a part of our R&R for the employees. Before I start talking about how we do our volunteering program, just want to go briefly over the trends in corporate volunteering. Over the past decades, companies have much more aware and actively participating on serving society's need. According to 2018 Social Value of Major Companies report by Federation of Korean Industries, 79% of the major Korean corporations, including CJ, were engaged in some sort of corporate citizenship activities. Those included traditional philanthropic activities, such as corporate giving and volunteer programs, as well as a new efforts such as impact investing and skill-based volunteering. At CJ, we're also doing more and more of a skill-based pro bono mentoring as our volunteer. But statistics, CJ has actively promoted employees' awareness of volunteering, and we say we are actually breeding the culture of participating for more than 20 years. Currently, about 80% of all employees participate in volunteering every year through CJ's program. There are about 20 programs run by CJ's Welfare Foundation, and each individual company is run. In 2018, we ran about 980 different volunteer programs. So we built one of the most advanced the web-based system. The employees can actually check what kind of volunteer programs being managed at the end of this weekend, and that they can apply. the trend that I wanted to actually mention about different types of problems in the society needs different types of solution. And many of the complex problems, we found out that traditional approaches are not the solution, and we think that collective impact or the impact-based solution could be more appropriate. Collective impact is energizing as a new way to describe how various players cooperate and try to solve social problems through voluntary services and social contribution. CJ's social contribution and volunteering is constantly changing as well. So from now on, I would like to share where we solve the problems and then how the collective impact approach works. First case is a youth culture club. Culture industry is very important for Korea's future economic growth, and it's one of the most desired career choices for young people. The creativity and convergent thinking skills are needed for children in this era of fourth industrial revolution, and it can be nurtured through education. It is important for children to have the opportunity to explore many different forms of culture and be able to develop their own interest. However, lack of financial support for the teenagers is the biggest barrier these days. It used to be where someone who doesn't have anything, if you have a talent, you can make it. But now the things have changed, and then they have to compete with someone who's been actually groomed. So there are up to certain level that the proper education in early stage or proper exposure to many different genre of culture is very important. CJ Youth Culture Club we launched through CJ Welfare Foundation in 2013. It's to support the youth from low-income families to develop their creative potential and nurture their personalities in a balanced way. The program provides CJ's infrastructure experience and creative education for children with dreams in the culture field, such as film, music, broadcasting, fashion and beauty, and cooking. We hope that this program would be a win-win situation for everyone involved, because we are mainly dependent upon the pyramid of a volunteer system. For example, this year, 36 CJ employees from all areas, ranging from music to HR, volunteered to participate as an expert mentor. They create and develop the curriculum. But they also work with 158 university student volunteers, and they work as a mentee for these expert mentors, but they are also the mentor in their children's facility centers. So each week, the university student mentors visit these centers to coach students. And then at the end of the school year, the student will have a chance to perform their creation in a concert. University students' mentorship program is very popular because there is also practical help for them as well. Many university students who volunteer to work as mentors are majoring in related subjects. And many of them want to work as CJ after graduation. This mentoring program can offer a good experience and a smooth transition from school to work, because we offer career advice sessions for the university student as well by the employee volunteers. They will have the opportunity to not only CJ employee mentors, but also we call it master mentors. These are the industry top people who could actually work with the CJ, and these university students, it's a great opportunity to meet them. So this can be an engagement across demographics. More mentors, members, employee pro bono members, and the master mentors. They mentor university students. So, you know, everyone mentor, mentee, it's a sort of like a pyramid. And so this is the one example. Second example is a tuner musician. Whereas CJ Welfare Foundation supports the children in financially difficult situations, the CJ Culture Foundation supports young creators in music, film, and theater. CJ Culture Foundation every year selects 5 to 7 musicians. So for now, we have about more than 80 musicians, 80 band groups. So in terms of the number of people, that could be multiplied by 4 or 5. These musicians get the assistance in production and marketing their music from CJ Foundation. We encourage these tuner musicians to participate in volunteering programs as teachers in many music programs we run, such as the Juvenile Detention Center or a special school for teenage delinquent, and sometimes special schools for the ethnic minority groups. We just selected some stories, and then one boy, after participating in this program, he was in Juvenile Detention Center, and he did some soul searching and decided to do something else. He became a musician, he wrote song, and then that song, he won the contest in China. So he's actually trying to be a singer in Asia. Another example is a young troubled teenage girls who's been missing school more than 100 times one semester, but she decided to change her attitude because now she wants to go to university as a musician. So the third case that I want to share is an agriculture development CSP project in Vietnam. Tam Am village is located in the central part of Vietnam called the Ninh Thuan province. It's one of the poorest villages in Vietnam. The average annual farm income in the village is about $235 and about 64 cents per day, and that was the way below poverty line in any standard. Their main production was corn and cassava. With their agricultural productivity very low, the village did not even have a co-op. In 2014, CJ partnered with the Korea International Cooperation Agency, KOICA, and Vietnamese government, and we started the CJ KOICA Agricultural CSP project in Tam Am village. The project had a two-part. One was the agriculture. CJ would teach the farmers how to grow Korean-style chili, and we will purchase after harvest. The other is a community development. KOICA's volunteers work on the community development called the Semaul. So we actually work on both the financial side and community development side. As you can see, there are many the parties involved, and most of them, from the beginning, they had the volunteering element of it, and then some of them actually developed into the volunteering. For example, KOICA, the K-Water was our business partner for the agricultural irrigation. After they came and saw, the employees decided to actually add some of them as a CSR and volunteer. So the agriculture irrigation was a part of the project, but to putting the clean water to every household was the added project as a volunteer and CSR of the K-Water. The other thing is we worked with the many different corporations as well. There was a Syngenta who provided the seed. So what we wanted to do is what everyone's bringing their expertise, and then more importantly, if their employees volunteerism. So this is the example of cross-sector partnership. I don't think I have time to show this, but if you want, and we've been actually playing this video outside, so I'm gonna skip this. The last one is the traditional volunteerism that we do with the food sharing activities. And then the reason why I'm actually introducing this case is that even though this is the simple volunteerism, but I think we've been actually doing more than Like we started officially since 2014, but this has been as a food company. This is a combination of what we, as a company, to encourage our employees to use our expertise, whether it's a company industry expertise or their personal expertise into volunteerism. So I'm just going to quickly going into the conclusion. The conclusion is that the companies can influence volunteerism in many ways. It can create organizational culture, like we try to do, or design activities so that the employees, but then the community can also participate. Creating culture is what we try to do. CJ at the forefront of spreading K culture, but we also think that spreading the volunteer culture is just as important. We hope to become the leading company in all our businesses, whether it's a share or entertainment, but we also wanted to be industry leader for all our CSR activities. We've never done much of the advertisement in Korea. We've never did. We think that expenses should be also put into the action, but we would like to share the cases so that many other corporations can share their experience and we learn from each other. There is a famous proverb left by Helen Keller saying, alone we can do so little. Together we can do so much. I think this should apply to all these corporation CSR activities. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thanks so much. I think that was a brilliant presentation, really powerful examples, and especially speaking about impact-based solutions through so many diverse initiatives. And K-pop, you know, the country that I come from, India, I think it's a roar there. A lot of young people are so much attached, and I think it'll be brilliant to see, you know, how volunteering, the spirit of volunteering can be in tune through that kind of culture which is building globally. Excellent. So with that, I'd like to move to Mr. PHONGSATHORN, and would request you to share about the public-private sector government partnerships that's making the work more transparent and more impactful at Premier Group.
Thank you very much. I was okay and calm until I heard this presentation and impressive stories from CJ, so I'm really very excited now. But first of all, I'd like to thank the organizing people for the great conference, very successful. Volunteer Spirit, Thailand, Nantini, VSO, and many volunteers. I observed their determination and the energies that they have put forward in organizing this great conference. But of course, I've known the two organizations for some time now, and the determinations and the efforts have always been there. So congratulations for your works. I'm thankful for inviting me to speak at this conference. It's an honor to be among the two panelists, and of course it's even more important that to be able to speak with delegates, active citizens from various countries in Asia Pacific, to share our humble experience here in Thailand. Nantini has asked me to, of course, stick to the theme of Stronger Together, and perhaps share some story of the platform for collaboration, especially cross-sector collaboration efforts that we have been doing here in Thailand. I'm from the corporate sector originally, but I'm not a stranger to the civil society for the past, I think, 28 years now. But in terms of our objectives, as SACHAL mentioned the challenges earlier that we're all facing in our societies, ranging from natural disasters to inequality, poverty, education, environmental issues, lack of good governance, corruptions. So these are all very big issues. In order for us to tackle and hopefully be able to overcome, to win over some of the social pressure that we're lacking of, we need active citizens. We need volunteers. We need numbers of change agents in our societies. We need the numbers. We need the economy of scale. We need the synergies that we all work together. Collaboration is very important. So the efforts, all of our efforts have been put towards creating various platforms for collaboration, for people to become active citizens, to become volunteer, to become change agents in our society. Multiple interventions that we need for the multiple issues that we have in our society. So I thought it's best that I explain, perhaps cite some of the examples that I think altogether 5 examples because of the time limitations. That we call, point that direction, okay. We call, impactful volunteering platform, a platform that allow people to become active citizens, to become hopefully active change agents in our society. But of course needs to be impactful. So the principles are, innovation, innovative, not rocket science. We need collaboration, so it needs to be collaborative because we need combined efforts. It needs to be effective, of course, impactful, and it needs to be scalable because of the size of the challenges that we're all facing. In order to do that, we go out and entice, engage, and especially empower these active citizens, these volunteers, to come up with the multiple interventions that we all need. I will explain a little bit about these 5 examples that we have been involved with here in Thailand. I didn't follow the instruction. I should go that direction. The first example is a volunteering platform involving improving public procurement, the governance of public procurement, prevention of corruption, fairer competition, more effective use of public fund. The program it wasn't invented by us. We kind of borrowed and adapt the program that was originated by Transparency International, which is a very important organization working on anti-corruption and improving governance systems. Integrity Pact is a program where, in general, public procurement involves the public sector, the various projects, and the bidders and contractors. But these programs also involve independent, what we call independent observers. Number of volunteers become officially involved, and the program, after 5 years or after 3 years, has now been integrated into the Public Procurement Act. So it's official. It's not just something that we're trying to squeeze ourselves in to be involved with. For the past 5 years, until now, cumulatively, we're involved, the volunteers, the independent observers are now involved in 104 projects, very sizable, 1.8 trillion baht. So that's about 60 billion US dollars worth of public procurement programs. So it's very sizable. Some of the disbursements have been, of course, implemented. So far, the savings in these projects are worth about 30%. So approximately 74 billion baht worth of savings out of better efficiency, more transparent, fairer competition, and prevention of any corruptions that people try to get themselves involved with. So far, we have total 244 independent observers. They are engineers, lawyers, finance people, people from management, civil servants, people from civil society, NGOs, some specialists in the area of transportation, in even satellite communications and all those, because of the range of projects that we're involved with. So we feel, and of course as an evidence, it is a very impactful platform of volunteer getting themselves involved in public procurement. Next example is more general, still involved in prevention of corruption. A watchdog project involves all range of walks from the society. We've trained already, I think, close to 1,000 people, and about 200 roughly working as active whistleblowers, watchdogs in all parts of the country. So we train them to observe, to understand the project, the process, to understand some of the shortfalls, some of the opportunities for people to do wrongdoings. So these are active people who report in through social media and report to the relevant authorities. And many of the reports have been, I think about 24% of the reports have gone through investigations and preventions and even punishment of the wrongdoers. So these are some of, actually we should disclose their face because they should do this in certain level of secrecy. The third one involves, was started off by actually this hospital director from a small hospital in the province of Lopburi, being, public health servants. The doctors and the nurses and the nutritionists in the hospital observed that there are poor elderly people who can't even come to the hospitals for their medical checkups or medical care. So they made an effort in using their spare times to go out and visit these poor elderly people in their homes and provide the care. But since they are fully occupied with their normal work, so the spare times are not sufficient. So they went into putting in an effort in organizing and train some of the local people to become care helpers, care providers. So this is a very efficient way in looking after the poor elderly people at their homes. They only come to the hospital when it is necessary. And this program now has been approved by the ministries involved after, I think, 5 years of effort, that it has become now official that they agree to provide some of the funds to support these volunteers to go and visit on a daily basis, providing food, cleaning, exercises, and medication to these elderly people. So the hope is to extend this project to other parts of the country, aiming for 20,000 care helpers, and hoping to look after about 200 elderly people around the country, 200,000, I mean. The next one is concerning education. We all know education is very important. Moral and ethics is a very important component in educating our children, and we've been lacking here in Thailand. So this program focuses on in-school moral and ethics development in school. It involves, well, the process is as shown, participation of everyone in school, community engagement, bottom-up approach, so they come up with their own initiatives and all that. Our volunteers go out and facilitate these processes and monitor the efforts and provide, coaching and mentoring support. Who are these volunteers? These are retired school principals and school teachers, 50 of them. In fact, today we're just closing our annual conference meeting with all these volunteer former school principals. So these are professionals who've been providing education and care for children throughout their life, 30, 40 years. So they are really the true experts in making the efforts happen. The last one is also involved in providing scholarship for needy children, the poorest of the poor. But the project involves charity shop series of franchise of charity shop that involves all walks of life. So everyone can be involved in providing the things that they no longer need in their homes, whether it's clothing, books, or furniture, or whatever. And the program opens series of shops, currently around Bangkok and starting to extend to other parts of Thailand. Sell them, of course, to actually donors. So the funds are used to provide scholarship for the needy children. Who are involved in this? Who are the people who volunteer in this? The active donors, the charity shoppers. Of course, they have some merchandise in return, but in most cases, they purchase for both purpose because they like the merchandise, but they do it for the cause. We have 153 active organizations, business organizations who are supporting this program. We have, this year alone, 882 volunteers working on this. We have already received 1.2 million pieces of merchandise from the various donors that I mentioned this year alone, because it's been going on for, I think, about 20 years already. So cumulatively, there are plenty of these entry-level, many of them are entry-level volunteers helping with this program. So we have supported thousands of needy children through these programs, through these platforms so far. So these are some of the example of what we call impactful volunteering platform that I think, badly need. We need to do much more. We need to have many more active citizens, active change agents to initiate many of these platforms to engage, to allow more people to become involved. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. PHONGSATHORN. I think out of all the examples you shared, Integrity Pact and Watchdog Project are my favorite, I think. Really bold and interesting steps being taken in a cross-sector collaboration where there's government coming in, where there's civil society, where there's private sector, and each ensuring that the entire process of procurement is really transparent and impactful. Great. I would also recommend all of you to, if there are any questions, thoughts, suggestions coming to mind, just make a mental note of that. We'll be coming to the questions after our last speaker. So moving from Asia, we'll go to the Pacific. So from Korea, Thailand, we go straight now to New Zealand, and we'll hear Michelle speaking about volunteer migration. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you, SACHAL. Okay, I've got it ready. Kia ora koutou. My name is Michelle Kitney and I am the Chief Executive of Volunteering New Zealand, and it's a real honour to be here today presenting to you among esteemed other panellists and a fantastic delegation of people, so thank you. So Volunteering New Zealand has recently developed a national volunteering strategy to support recent migrant volunteers. Today I will share some of the core principles and insights gained from the development and implementation of this. Volunteering New Zealand is the kaitiaki of Mahi Aroha, empowering volunteers to enrich Aotearoa New Zealand. This is our purpose, and what that translates into meaning is that we are the guardians of volunteering within New Zealand. So that's our key purpose. So what does Volunteering New Zealand do? Our strategic focus is for volunteering within New Zealand to be inclusive, impactful, ethical and meaningful. We value, advocate and lead for volunteering within New Zealand. We do this through a range of mechanisms: advocacy, research, best practice guidelines. We do an annual conference, webinars that are free to anyone in New Zealand, or anyone in the world actually, and we also deliver a range of research and consultancy contracts to the wider sector. In 2017, we successfully tendered to the government for funds available to support the government's goals around facilitating migrant participation in host communities. The available funding aimed to support the creation of bridging capital for new migrants and to contribute towards the goal of the New Zealand Migrant Integration and Settlement Strategy, specifically Outcome 4, which is around inclusion. So the goal was wrapped around the funding was for migrants to participate in and have a sense of belonging to their community in New Zealand. This opportunity aligned with our own vision and values, and we knew there was an opportunity to make a difference in this space through volunteering. It was also an opportunity to reflect the value and importance of volunteering and what it contributes to inclusion and social capital generally. Our funding application was successful because we were able to work nationally and collaboratively with the Volunteer Centre network to deliver on the contract. When we're thinking about the why of the project, I think these words of Tui Tran, who was someone we connected through the process of developing our strategy, sums it up. It is so hard to come to a new place, but finding a community really helped me settle. When we came to New Zealand, my first question was, how do we meet people? How can we connect? The answer was volunteering. When we started this program, the data reflected that recent migrants to New Zealand were not accessing volunteering opportunities at the same rate as the wider community. Research showed that recent migrants continue to face challenges in being included within New Zealand communities. External research found that 37% of recent migrants had difficulty getting involved in their communities, 21% did not feel welcome in their communities, and 44% had experienced unfair or biased behaviour towards them. Research that we conducted during our program showed that many recent migrants continue to face barriers to volunteering, including a lack of adequate information around volunteering opportunities. Consultation with our stakeholders showed that many migrants had experienced biased behaviour while volunteering, and many organisations unfortunately lack trust in recent migrants. Volunteer centres and community organisations had indicated to us through our consultation process that a national strategy and more resources would assist them to better help recent migrant volunteers within their own communities. There are 17 volunteer centres throughout New Zealand. They deliver frontline volunteer recruitment and training to community organisations in their own regions, and they provide the matching service to match volunteers to volunteer opportunities in those community organisations. VNZ has a unique relationship with the 17 volunteer centres. We are all separate entities, so we're not actually structurally connected, but we all work collaboratively towards the same kind of vision and goals. So when we pitched for the contract to work on behalf of, or work nationally with the volunteer centres, it was an exercise in collaboration and cooperation. So in collaboration with the Volunteer Centre Network, is that the feedback, is that a problem? Is only me hearing it? Okay. Okay, right. So in collaboration with the Volunteer Centre Network, we delivered 3 elements to this program. Te Rautaki Mō Whanaungatanga, a national strategy to support recent migrants, a connected volunteering program, and recent migrant volunteering workshops. The strategy we delivered is the flagship output of the program. This is because it articulates our vision, values, strategic goals, and intended outcomes for the state of migrant volunteering in New Zealand. The vision of this program is that recent migrants are empowered to connect to, engage with, enrich their communities through meaningful volunteering. Recent migrants have the opportunity to participate in inclusive, ethical and impactful volunteering that is valued and supported by community and community organisations. Through this, we aim to improve outcomes for recent migrant volunteers and promote migrant volunteering best practice across the sector. Our program focused on supporting community and voluntary organisations to enhance the way that they reach out to recent migrant communities. We designed workshops that introduced recent migrants to the concept of volunteering in New Zealand and about the opportunities to volunteer in their local communities and also their rights as a volunteer. We created this centrally, including the artwork and the marketing resources. We also provided a facilitator to deliver those workshops around the country with the volunteer centres. And the goal was that after the VNZ facilitator had done it one time with them, that the local volunteer centre could pick up those workshops and deliver them themselves in the future. In addition to the workshops, we ran a connected volunteering program initiative. So we funded participating volunteer centres to do more to connect with recent migrants with volunteering opportunities relevant to their skills, needs and aspirations. and to provide mentoring and support. The model was loosely based on overseas examples of supported volunteering. So collaboration was really at the heart of the program. Sorry. Collaboration was really at the heart of the program. Building partnerships and collaborative relationships is at the core of the program. In fact, the Māori name of the strategy, Te Rautaki Mau Whanaungatanga, translates literally to meaning the strategy for connections. This program really took a lot of collaboration, and this was key to successfully rolling it out, the initiatives. Collaboration was also essential in developing the strategies. We needed to develop a range of new relationships, partnerships and connections within volunteering and more widely with local and national government and with the wider not-for-profit sector. So how did we collaborate and what did we kind of learn along the way? There were a number of features to our collaboration through this work. We had a shared vision and we had related or shared understanding of the challenges, which gave us the framing for finding ways to work together. We leveraged off existing pilots and programs. We didn't recreate the wheel. We surveyed and sought input directly from recent migrant volunteers, of course. They provided feedback on the strategy document through surveys, through face-to-face interviews, and we worked with an organisation called Cultural Connections, a migrant and diversity research company. They were excited to support us because we're bringing better outcomes, ideally, to their communities. And that basically got them on board, and they actually worked for us on a pro bono basis to do the research, which was a great bonus. We obviously worked with key stakeholders, organisations working with and advocating for migrants within the New Zealand wider community. And some of them actually enabled us to access some of their own advisory groups to test research and test the strategy out with. We even collaborated with our government stakeholders. We, at a very technical level, they provided advice and feedback on the framing and technical wording of the strategy. And we, of course, worked collaboratively with volunteer centres for program design and delivery. VNZ created core resources centrally for the workshops and evaluation and feedback forms, and we designed guidelines for implementing the initiatives, which we shared and allowed the volunteer centres to implement as they felt was right for their centres. So we sort of gave them the guiding principles, but we didn't actually tell them how to do it. There were been sort of reflecting on the things that we learnt as we went in relation to collaboration and navigating the barriers. Some things we learnt at the beginning and some things we learnt as we went along. I've already kind of mentioned this, but collaboration and communication was key to building relationships and getting buy-in for the program. Strong stakeholder relationships were required to navigate various needs, so understanding reporting up to government and rolling out initiatives down to volunteer centres within their communities took a lot of engagement and communication. I've sort of mentioned this already, but we didn't tell the volunteer centres how to do it in their centres. We just gave them the framework within which to operate. The strategy is framed in the same way. It's principles-based and it's not prescriptive, but it has practical application. We also invested time at the start of the program creating evaluation tools that would work at different levels for the different levels of reporting required at different levels. So what we needed to report up to government for the contract was different to what we needed to collect on the ground in relation to outputs. And putting time in at the start to find practical ways to report up was, I think, a really useful tool, like a useful thing to focus on at the start. And we worked in an opt-in model. We didn't, some volunteer centres weren't in a position to roll out some of the initiatives, so it wasn't forced upon them. So, what are the outputs and the outcomes and the impact? We created a simple evaluation process to ensure that we were able to meet our reporting requirements. The metrics we captured through this process today indicate that the program has been really successful. The workshops and connected volunteering program gave many migrants the sense of confidence needed to take their first steps into volunteering. This is what our evaluation is telling us. Analysis of the data from the post-program survey showed that 73% of connected volunteering participants were volunteering at the end of their program, and 64% would definitely volunteer into the future. Feedback shared with us showed that the majority of recent migrant volunteers felt more confident and had a greater sense of belonging to New Zealand after completing either the workshop or the connected volunteering program. When asked about the benefits achieved through volunteering, participants most strongly indicated that it enabled them to make new friends, connect and support with New Zealand communities, and learn about customs and culture and language and history, and to practice English. Those were the things that was reported up as what was of benefit to the participants. Feedback from the volunteer centres and the community organisations indicate that the strategy document will serve them as a useful tool to enable them to better engage with recent migrant volunteers and to champion migrant volunteering best practice. Instead of kind of talking about data and results, I wanted to end by sharing some words of some of the amazing people we were privileged, just seeing the 2-minute mark, good timing, we were privileged to connect with during the program. Julia from Brazil. For me, there are many advantages to being gained from volunteering. You are helping, you're part of the community, and you're part of us. Wael from Syria, who is also works in the same office as me now, and we have a shared space. Volunteering helped me settle and find new friends. Through volunteering, I met people who were connected through a common cause. We shared smiles, laughs, and friendships while working to help the community. Volunteering really opened the doors for me. I have been here for 2 years, and Wellington now feels like home. It's a great feeling to belong here. My circle of friends has also gotten bigger because of volunteering. And this is my favourite of all. For me, volunteering is about meeting each week with a chance to grow, learn, and challenge myself. It is a personal way for me to say, Aotearoa New Zealand, here I am. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Michelle. And thanks for raising the point around collaboration, which is really the key. I mean, working in any part of development, you could be an organization across, you could be a sector, but alone, you know, we all know that we cannot really solve the problem in its entirety. It is really important to interact, get together, share knowledge, resources, and collaborate. And often collaboration around failures or around challenges is a lot better way of getting together than just collaborating around solutions. So something to think about. I'm just looking at the energy in the room. We'll have a round of questions, but just before that, would you guys want to do an energizer? Okay, let's all rise. Do you know what's the Mexican wave? So what we'll do is, we see the room is divided into like 4 sections. So we'll start from here, and I would request everyone to raise both their arms. So you stand and you sit. And when you sit, the second row gets up, you stand, you stretch, you sit. Then we get the third one and the fourth one, and we do it again. Cool? So everyone can sit down. Thank you. And we'll start from here. Let's start. Yes. Whoa! Again. Continue. Excellent. Thank you. Thank you so much. So now over to the Q&A section. I think we heard a lot. We got very different perspectives, from private sector organizations. We heard from civil society. And they touched on some very important points and some very powerful examples. So I have my set of questions, but I'd like to hear first from the audience. So if you have a question, I would request you to raise your hand. Introduce yourself, your name, where you're from, which organization, and your question. And if it is specifically directed to any of the panelists, you can tell us. Otherwise, it will be open to any of the panelists to respond. So, any show of hands for questions? Yes?
Good morning. My name is Supawadi from Thai Volunteer Service Foundation based in Bangkok. Actually, I would like to address this question to Kun VICHIEN because he mentioned it's very important two words. One is volunteer as a change agent and volunteer as an active citizen, which I think is very important. And I would like to ask him to elaborate more or to explain more about these two important words in working on volunteerism. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, and appreciate your keen observation on the two important words that I intentionally use. Of course, everyone can be volunteers, and I hope that everyone who become, either they already are or become volunteers in various forms, which is good for our society. But while we're facing some of the difficult challenges in our society, where level of volunteering needs to be lifted in order for impact to be created in rectifying all these challenges that we're all facing. So I intentionally use the word that, volunteering, active citizenship, and of course, change agents. Because in terms of performing anyone's volunteer work, you can do it on an ad hoc basis. I cited an example of, supporting charity shop, bring your merchandise, you can volunteer to do some of the works. But we need people who become practitioners, implementing interventions to rectify the problems that I mentioned. We need intermediaries who facilitate the practitioners to do their works efficiently. We need people who support, whether it's financially or in kind. We need people who can come up with initiatives and managing the various collaboration efforts, because we need these synergies, and we need the scale in terms of working in trying to solve many of the major problems. So various levels of volunteering from just an ad hoc volunteering entry level to become active citizens. So you create, you initiate ideas, work on a constant basis as change agents, creating various platforms and organizing various efforts.
Thank you. Some more questions? Yep. Yep. So we'll have a question from here and then we'll go to Lord.
Thank you. Thank you for great presentation. I'm Tazin from Bangladesh. My question is to Michelle, that you are engaging migrant communities to become volunteers. So what are the challenges they face due to diverse cultural background in their work, and how do you overcome those?
Thank you. Oh, is it going? I guess in terms of the challenges, often the barriers are on the organisational side in terms of one of the things that bubbled up through some of the feedback was an assumption that language would be a barrier for recent migrants, and that might be why organisations might not be engaging with recent migrants within New Zealand. So that actually didn't stack up in the research, and we made a point of that in our program, or in our strategy, to reflect that back, that language shouldn't be a barrier for the general recent migrant population. Obviously, people from a refugee background and people on certain visa categories may have found that as that may be a barrier. I guess some of the challenges potentially are about how long they've been in New Zealand and how settled they are. I guess the availability of time and what their focus is when they first arrive. We didn't go deep down into barriers for different ethnicities or cultures, so I can't specifically answer that. Yeah.
Thank you. Next question there. Yep.
Yes, hello. My name is Lori Foster, and I'm with IAVE. My question is for Ms. Min about CJ's program. You have such a huge participation rate. I'm wondering if you provide any formal training for volunteers, particularly those who are doing mentorships, and also if you have a program that recognizes the contributions of volunteers.
Thank you, Lori. The second question, are you talking about how we measure the impact, or are you talking about just the feedback? Feedback, okay. We do not actually have the formal training, but we do have, for every volunteer activities, we have some information session. So for especially working with the youth groups, and then they are from economically challenged groups, we want to make sure that our employees, who's usually, not really dealing with it, these groups day-to basis, make sure that they are sensitive about some of the things. So it's not a formal training, but it's an information session. Regarding their activities, they are actually voluntarily coming up with the curriculums. Measuring the feedback, we're very much following up the feedback. We want to make sure that this is the meaningful experience. I mean, I guess in the early days, we could actually encourage in almost involuntary way to everyone participates. I still have mixed feelings about it, because most of people, after they participated, they are happy about it and they usually participate more. However, I think the social change is happening that we can't really, as an employer, we cannot ask someone. There are a lot of individualism, so we just leave a lot more things to more voluntary things. It's just that sometimes when they're really busy, the first experience is even though like someone almost like there's a nudge. So there's some, like even as a personal, like the torment between how much nudge we actually provide to the employees to participate for the first volunteer activities, and after that, our recurring participation is very high. So I should say the feedback is good. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Yep.
Thank you very much. My name is Matumon Kataranchak from VSO, Volunteering for Development Organization. I have a question to CJ in terms of your belief and also methodologies. You mentioned about the collective impact and also the belief in volunteering. I would like to know in terms of the strategies or maybe in order to transferring this belief to other private organizations, what do you think would help in terms of to see the values of volunteering? And the second question I have to Khun Vichien from Premier Group regarding your program, which is very interesting in the Integrity Pact, which is about working with three parties to make sure that the transparency in the procurement is improved. Definitely, social accountability is very important in many of the countries, and sometimes it can be seen that it's very difficult area because it also involves service providers. So I'd like to hear from Khun Vichien in terms of your strategy in bringing in service provider to take part in the process, and also how the way that we can influence in seeing the outcome of the programs with the acceptance of all stakeholders. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Just two questions. Would you like to go first?
Thank you. I guess I will approach from both ways. We try to actually maximize our impact, and then there are two ways to do it. One is like horizontally. We actually, like for example, for youth program, we start with the early years and then make sure that until they get a job. But I mean, there is some pitfall, which is that we don't want these students stay in this kind of situation or facility for throughout. I mean, the meaning that if they are staying with us for all throughout from elementary school until they go to university, they never get out of that situation. So instead, we try to create a collective impact horizontally, meaning approach in a holistic way. Like for example, when the students, they are, like we want to give them the cultural exposure, but we want them to have like build a balance to their personality and feel good about themselves. So what we do is we actually find the partners. In every program, we try to find the partners. And we also think that when we use the volunteer, we can maximize the impact as well. So if we work with the volunteer, the partnering organization, there's something that organization can bring as an organization, whether it's a different company or NGO. But then if they actually have an element of volunteerism built into what they're bringing into this project, then our very important key element of sharing culture, which is volunteerism, we are actually meeting all those criteria together. So I hope that answers your question.
Okay. Concerning Integrity Pact, and your question was about service providers. So a few levels of service providers, whether contracted service providers. The program is built around, first of all, volunteers of professional independent observers. And they're professionals that have expertise related to each particular projects, whether they have IT expertise, legal expertise, finance, engineering, and all. So that's on a volunteer basis. Minimal expenses provided for these people to work with us. Well, to say that, this program is managed by Anti-Corruption Organization Thailand, where you are a member of. I'm serving for the organization also. So that's first level. At an organization level, we also work with them. We work with the Association of Engineers, Architects, Auditing Association. I'm not sure exactly what their English name is, and the like. So we're working with these various organizations also on pro bono basis. And when necessary, we engage service providers, but I think in rare cases that we have gone out, because the process is still managed by the government, by the public sector, by the procuring sector, and of course they engage service providers for various efforts. In terms of engaging the general public for this effort, it is very important because 200 plus volunteers alone cannot go out and observe and watch these ongoing projects all the time. So we need watchful eyes to report in any, unfortunately, irregularities in implementing some of these projects. So we have a platform that people can also report in. Not properly linked between the two efforts yet, but the current platform that we're using is called Tong Chair in Thai. I don't think we have an English name for it yet, but it is a platform that allows people to report in and encourage them to keep watchful eyes on these various projects. On an ongoing effort is to create these big data of procurements already implemented to a certain extent, called ACT AI, Anti-Corruption Organization AI, Artificial Intelligence. So people can have information, proper information, while they're keeping watchful eyes.
Thank you. And I think collaboration, which was one of the points that came out, it's really important to collaborate very well internally within the organization and then be able to collaborate outside of it. So keeping that in mind, one of the questions I had for our panelists was that how do you assess the effectiveness of collaboration? And from your experience, because all these transformational programs that you've led, there would have been a significant amount of challenges that you would have to overcome. So some key thoughts, some learnings from us. How do you assess effectiveness of collaboration? Would you like to go first?
I mean, on our program, it's almost a key element. So it's impossible to actually take out or separate the impact of a collaboration and the impact of the program itself. Like, for example, our youth programs are almost 100% dependent upon volunteers. All these activities are happening around the volunteers, by the volunteers. So when we actually measure the impact itself, I think that's sort of the result of the collaboration as well. But I guess in some other cases it could be different. But most of our cases that when we use the volunteers, that they are the key element of the success of the program.
I second what you've just said, actually. But and I did think that's a really hard question. But on reflecting on it, one of the things that sprung to mind was, and not that we measured this in our program, but looking at the sustained stakeholder relationships that come out of it, and the quality of those, and the maintenance of those. And Specifically for our program, VNZ maintained the evaluation and reporting for the whole sector, and we've got some good outcomes and some research that's come out of that. And I think the cross benefit of that is we can make that available to the volunteer centres, who can then, if they're looking to do something locally, they've got evidence of the impact of volunteering in relation to social inclusion and the effectiveness of the two initiatives. So, yeah.
Yes. Well, assessment and reflections are very important, of course. I mentioned somewhat about the impacts of each of the projects that we're doing, but specifically to collaboration, I think we all understand the challenges in making collaboration efficient. In many cases, people will feel that, well, like-minded people working together should be collaborating efficiently. That's not always the case, as you know. People from cross sectors, people from various backgrounds, collaborating are even bigger challenges. So in terms of reflecting on some of the challenges that we're facing in collaborating, trying to making collaboration effective and impactful, is this feedback system that comes back that tells us that we need to improve communications, sharing of information, making sure people share the same understanding, creating venues for people to meet, to discuss, to exchange, and to discuss the various differences that they normally have while they're doing all these good deeds. So the assessment and reflection process tells us that we need to always go back and improve on the various collaboration efforts that we're making.
Any comments? Any more questions? Yeah, Cheryl?
Hi, my name is Cheryl from S&P Global Foundation. Thank you for the panel for wonderful examples about collaboration and effective partnerships. My question is around, we all understand the strength and the power of partnerships and collaboration, but it's also the downside of having too many cooks in the kitchen. There's differing timelines and mindsets of different sectors. How do we prevent, going to the lowest common denominator amongst the different stakeholders in the partnerships? And how do we sort of understand each other's timeline, speed, and pace and definitions when it comes to achieving shared goals? Your tips and advice, please.
I think that's you. It was a really good question, especially collaboration among corporations. The corporations, I think the biggest challenge is actually internal communication. Internal communication meaning that the biggest selling point or the benefit that we're actually persuading to the top level executives are the PR point. And then when you actually collaborate with the other corporations, that you have to fulfill many of those PR points. So that's when the authenticity comes into play. I think it's much easier if you are actually working with a different industry corporation. But I think that actually fits into our model that we want to make sure that everyone brings into what they are best at. So, for example, in our project, we worked with the Syngenta. They are the agriculture company. It's an agriculture project, but our strength is the market access. So we are a food company. So we didn't have any problem that, and also in working with other industry, that we're covering not only different turf, but it's quite often complementary for a philosophical basis as well. So that's one wisdom. But even then, I think well planned, we have to make sure that from the beginning that what each other's roles are, and making sure that we never really question their authenticity. So I think a lot of things that just you build a good shared vision in the early on and constantly communicate and build a trust together.
I've made notes that say exactly that. What worked for us is having a shared vision, potentially being a bit bilingual about the vision, and having clear roles and a clear plan, and having someone take the lead and be responsible for kind of keeping it all together. Those were the factors of success for us. I appreciate that when you extrapolate that out to bigger entities, that could be a challenge. But I think communication, roles, collaboration, and I guess, yeah, trying to stick to that.
Well, I think in each of the platform for collaboration needs to be properly designed. It's not that, all efforts, we bring everyone to the table and, 400 people join in with their ideas and comments and all that. So it needs to be properly designed, who plays what roles. I think, for example, the in-school moral ethics, for example, we have all these experienced school principals and teachers who work as coach and mentors. We work with the teachers, we work with the students and with the communities. So level of engagement expand with proper role for them to play. Of course, communities play a role in terms of, working with their children and learning what goes on in school also. So in all cases, I think these efforts need to be proper designed and bring the right people to the table for each of the, the efforts that we're trying to do.
Thank you. We just have time for one last question. Okay. So I'd like the panelists to just share your last words of wisdom. You've shared a lot of knowledge with us. Like one key takeaway which you would like to give to the audience.
I just wanted to, my last word of wisdom, probably authenticity. I mean, it's the meaningful experience for everyone and an authenticity. And then I think around the authenticity, you can build a trust together.
I just wanted to potentially add something to the question that was asked earlier of me in closing, in that one of the key things that the strategy that we delivered wasn't about changing recent migrants. It was about creating an environment where volunteer involving organisations pivot and understand recent migrants better, irrespective of what their different cultural backgrounds are. So, I didn't say this in my presentation, but I did bring lots of the strategies with me, and they're in the front if anyone would like to take a copy.
Thank you.
I think while we have, hundreds of active citizens and change agents, of course, volunteers here, I truly believe that we need many more of the like of yourselves to, work with the various challenges that we're facing. So sharing knowledge, learning to work with each other, opening doors to engage more and more people to become, active players in doing the like of the things that you all are doing is very important.
Thank you so much. And collaboration is the way and the only way I feel that, we'll be able to achieve any development goals that we've all set for ourselves, for our countries, for our societies, and for the world. With that, I'd like to thank the entire volunteering team first, who helped plan the session, our timekeeper, the IT and logistics support. I think you guys have done a fabulous job, so let's have a round of applause for them first. Thank you. And then to our wonderful panelists, thank you so much for your time and for sharing such great examples with us. And thanks to you for being such a wonderful audience. Thank you. Over to Un Hatar.